Hi guys, welcome to our daily encounter. When we come to the conquest of Ai, we see that things were a little bit different than what took place when they conquered Jericho. In Jericho, they destroyed everything. It says in chapter 6 in verse 21, they utterly destroyed everything in the city, both man and woman, young and old, and ox and sheep and donkey, with the edge of the sword. They destroyed everything. But when they came to Ai, they were allowed to take some of the animals as plunder for themselves. In verse 2 of chapter 8, it says, "You shall do to Ai and its king just as you did to Jericho and its king. You shall take only its spoil and its cattle as plunder for yourselves." So in one situation, they destroyed everything. In the other situation, they had spoil and they could take the cattle. And we might wonder, well, what's the difference between Ai and Jericho? Why in one case did they destroy everything, and in the other case, they were allowed to take a little bit for themselves? Well, the simple answer to that is it doesn't say. And we're not really sure exactly why that was the case. It could have been Jericho was the moon city, and it's suspected that maybe it was involved in the worship of the god of the moon. And maybe God wanted to eradicate that worship, that allegiance to this moon god by destroying everything, and to really impress on the hearts and the minds of the Israelites, but also on the nations around them, that he is God and he can destroy this moon god, very easily and totally wipe out the city. Whereas that may not have been the case with Ai. Or it could have been that the Lord was testing them to see if they would be obedient to him in this very first battle that they engaged in. To say, hey, if I put everything under the ban, let's see if they'll be obedient. In which case, they weren't 100% with, as we saw with Achan. But for whatever the reason, we see two different things happening between Jericho and Ai. In one case, they destroy everything. In the other case, not so much. And this, I think, gives us a great principle, because we as Christians, from a good heart, oftentimes we can think that if something is right, if I have a particular freedom, that I should engage in it all the time. Or if in certain cases I might be restricted from doing something, that I'm restricted all the time. And in a lot of cases, that's true. Some things are just wrong in and of themselves, and some things are just right in and of themselves. But situations that we find ourselves in can oftentimes determine, too, whether we should engage in something or refrain from something. And a few examples come to my mind from the New Testament. The Apostle Paul had this principle nailed down. He knew that there was times when he could eat meats. He knew that the meats that were used in the worship of idols, he knew that idols are nothing, that there's only one God and one Lord Jesus Christ, and that an idol is nothing, and that he could eat meat. And that was a freedom, a liberty that he had. But he knew also that if eating that meat would cause his brother to stumble, he would never eat meat again. And so he knew under certain circumstances it would be okay to eat the meat. Under other circumstances, it would not be okay to eat the meat. Another example is in receiving funds from a particular church that he's ministering to. He apparently did receive money from the church at Philippi, but when he was at Corinth, he said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to basically work at my trade, at tent making, and earn my living that way. And I'm not going to take money from the church because of the mindset of the people in Corinth. He decided that wouldn't be a good idea. So in one case it was okay, in the other case it was not okay. And I think that that's very important for us to understand, because we as Americans, and we think, well, if I have this freedom, then I can exercise my freedom. No one can take that freedom away from me. I'm going to exercise it no matter what. And that sort of thing. Or because we maybe have sensitive consciences, we might think that, well, because something's wrong in this particular situation, that it's wrong all the time. They might be the type that say, well, Paul refrain from taking money from the church in Corinth, so we should never take money from a church. Or might have been in situations where being supported by a church didn't work out well, and so think that we should never do that. We just have to be wise. We just have to be wise and be sensitive to the situations that we're in, to be able to respond properly to these situations, to pray to the Lord and wait on the Lord to give us guidance in different situations. And just to know that just because something is lawful, it's not always expedient, as Paul would say. It's not always something that we should do. It's not something that's always helpful. So as we're going through life, let's just try not to think so much in black and white. And as I mentioned before, of course, there are some things that are just out and out wrong, and there's some things that are just out and out right. But again, there are some things that we have to be very wise about, whether we engage in it or not. So as we do our reading today, and then as we go out and live our lives, let's be wise. Let's walk circumspectly to know how we ought to respond to other people, how to respond to different situations, and what we should do in every different case that we find ourselves in. So that, guys, I do thank you for watching the video today. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.